Hello and welcome back to Spirit Quest Reviews. This is episode 6. We are switching over now from bourbon to Colorado whiskey. Stranahan's Colorado whiskey. And I have it right here. Boom. Stranahan's Colorado whiskey. SCW on the cap. Let's give it a quick nosing and tasting before we talk too much more, shall we? Oh, oak is so prevalent in the nose. Not freshly cut young oak, but quite a bit of oak. Malty sweetness, like what you'd expect from a scotch. If you are a fan of scotch, you may be a fan of this. Give it a try. Yes, I do get citrus. I get cherries. Sweet cherries. Dark cherries too. That is beautiful. That is a beautiful nose. I would go as far to say that I even get coconut on the nose. Yes. Dark, ripe fruits, such as plums, nectarines. I do get some of that. Pomegranate. That's what it is. This smells so good. Oh my goodness, yes. You can taste the quality. That is a good whiskey. Even though it doesn't fit into a traditional category, they had to kind of make their own. It's worth making its own category for. This is a beautiful, beautiful whiskey. And what do I get on the taste? Let me give it another taste. The first thing that hits you is the malty sweetness. If you want to distinguish between what malty sweetness is like and what the corn sweetness is like, get yourself a bourbon, possibly Jim Beam, possibly something a little bit more advanced like Maker's Mark, Evan Williams, Four Roses, single barrel if you can afford it. And I do believe we'll be having a review of Four Roses single barrel coming up soon, so stick around for that. And I will give you the explanation as to why I'm not doing that review right now, which would make the most sense chronologically. But I'll get around to that when we do our Four Roses single barrel review. For now, Colorado Stranahan's whiskey. I want to say that the taste is so big. It has an extreme oakiness on the palate, but not so much as if you were just biting into a piece of wood, but more like if there were little flakes of oak in the whiskey. It is quite intriguing, quite entertaining. I've already added 5 milliliters of water to it, by the way, so that it can be setting and opening up. Setting, sitting. I'll let the English buffs figure that one out for me. Leave a comment for me if you are an English expert or writer or English professor or tutor. I'm leaving water sitting in the whiskey, or I'm leaving the whiskey to set with water in it. Please tell me what is correct. I would be interested to know. Drop me a comment, please. So, in the meanwhile, what did I get on the taste? I got no less than lemongrass. I got coconut again on the palate. I got freshly cut grass, lemon zest. I even got a little trace of chamomile. Yes, chamomile tea. Can you believe it? In a whiskey. Get yourself some chamomile. Taste the chamomile tea. Taste the whiskey. See if you get that too. Tell me if I'm the only one who gets that. That is so cool. Let me give it one more taste. I know we're waiting for it to open up, but let me just give it one more taste in the meantime. Oh, yes, nuttiness, almonds, walnuts, walnuts in particular, and even a little bit of pecan. Isn't that delightful? Oh, that is so good. I also got a little bit of toasted coffee grounds. Not like coffee once it's brewed, but like the aroma of the coffee grounds. Yes, that is so delightful. So while that's opening up, I would like to make a point about this. Again, it is 100% barley. From my understanding, they use 4 different strains of barley. I believe they are all malted. I may be incorrect about that. I tried to do some research beforehand and couldn't quite tell, but I am not getting any grain flavors. I'm not getting any grain alcohol. So I would assume that this is all malted barley. And it is so sweet that you may be confused at first. For those who are more inexperienced whiskey drinkers, you may confuse the sweetness of the malt for the sweetness of corn in a bourbon, but this is most certainly not a bourbon. And if you cannot distinguish between a malt whiskey and a bourbon, this is a good one to learn on and grow your whiskey expertise with. And on that note, I would like to say that this is bottled at 47% alcohol, 94 proof. It'll knock you in the face. It'll jostle you around a little. This whiskey is like the big guy that plays football that you know from your high school who's kind of a jerk, and it's not that he doesn't like you, he just has a strange sense of humor and likes to play around, and you're kind of buddies, but every time he sees you, he comes up and he gives you a shove, just a playful shove, but you feel it because he hits a little bit harder than he realizes that he does. That's this whiskey. This whiskey is very friendly, but also very strong, and sometimes plays a little bit more roughly than it means to. So now that it has set a little bit, set a little bit, let's go back to it and give it another nosing and tasting. Even more sweetness. Oh, the lemon is still there, and pepper. Pepper is coming out. Even, I would say, a white pepper, perhaps, is coming out. Oh, that is so good. Give me 1 second. I'm going to do something for this whiskey. Toffee. Taffy, actually. Laffy Taffy. That is amazing. Oh, it's quite strong now. I have to pull back a little bit for this. Oh, wood, pepper, spice. This smells delicious. Even bubblegum, I might say. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's delicious. That tastes like a campfire in my mouth. not to the extent that Lafroig does, and I don't think they peat smoke this, but I definitely got like a campfire smoke in my mouth on the next tasting, almost like a smoky milkshake, if you will. That's quite a bit what this tastes like. And I just added 5 more milliliters of water because this one can be diluted quite a bit and maintain quite a bit of its flavor because it has so much flavor to begin with. So we'll see what happens. In the meanwhile, I would like to point out a few things about this. I know I didn't say this earlier, and it's kind of late to bring it up now, but since they have the information for us printed on the bottle, this was distilled on 11/27/2012. That's right. November 27th, 2012. That makes this approximately 6 years old, 6.5 years old. This has been in the bottle for a while. As you can tell, I've been enjoying it. I opened this bottle first about, I would say, 3 or 4 months ago now, ish, going on 3 or 4 months. And sitting in the bottle with a little bit of air has really helped to bring out some of the finer aromas and flavors in this spirit. And I will say that I should have kept a tighter log of when I opened this spirit initially so that I could document how its flavor changes over time. As I said in a previous episode, all whiskeys oxidize after they've been opened and are exposed to the air, and this partly depends on how much space there is in the bottle. And if this is a concern for you, you can decant it into a smaller bottle sometimes to reduce the amount of surface area of the whiskey that is exposed to oxygen and oxygenation. But you may not always want to. On this whiskey, it has been quite a good thing. When I first opened this bottle of whiskey, and I've had Stranahans before, mind you. I've gone through a couple bottles of Stranahans in my lifetime. And part of that is because it retails for, I believe, $60 online, but I know where I can get it locally for $20 a bottle. Shh, that'll be our little secret, okay? But I have been enjoying Stranahans for quite a while now, and what I've noticed on all my bottles is that they age very well, unlike perhaps some spirits which lose flavor and develop strange flavors with oxidization. Stranahan's ages very nicely once it's been open, and in fact, I would recommend, if you are getting into whiskey, and even if you're already in whiskey, get yourself pen and paper. Write down your first experience with Stranahan's immediately after opening the bottle. Let it set 4 to 6 months. Come back to it. Don't look at your old notes. Experience it fresh again, and then compare, and you will more than likely be amazed at the difference. Give it a try. Pick up a bottle for yourself. It is worth $60, by the way. I've just been fortunate and blessed that one specific local vendor of alcohol doesn't know what he has. I really should buy all that they have in stock and stock it away for later. But what I don't get is opportunity for other people to experience quality whiskey that may not be able to afford to otherwise. So hopefully my leaving it there works out so that more people get into better spirits. And that's what this channel is about, by the way. It is about our spirit quest together as we experience fine spirits. And I know this episode has been going on somewhat longer than usual, but that is in part because there is just so much to say about this whiskey. It is such a good spirit. And because I wanted to taste it, let it set for 5 minutes, taste it again with water, and add 5 more milliliters of water and let it set 5 more minutes. So it's about that time. Let's give it another tasting and nosing. The citrus has really come out now. The citrus has become the dominant smell in the nose. The malty sweetness is still there. There's a slight bready quality. I do get a more coffee smell in the nose now. Oh yes. A green apple taste has developed in addition to previous flavors that I have mentioned. That is a good spirit. Believe it or not, you're going to think I'm making this up. I got Irish cream coffee flavoring. I got English toffee. Let me double check before I say this next one. Oh yes, I got orgeat, if you know what that is, an almond syrup. Earlier, the earthy, nutty notes were more prominent, but now the nuttiness has blended in with the sugar, so it tastes like orgeat, almond syrup, perhaps even amaretto, I would venture to say. I believe there's a mixed drink which calls for scotch and amaretto. I promise you, or I would be willing to bet anyway. I shouldn't make promises. That gets me into trouble. But I would be willing to bet that if you were to mix Stranahan's Colorado whiskey with amaretto or orgeat in a mixed drink, the flavor profiles would play very, very nicely together. And that was the last of our Stranahan's Colorado whiskey. Oh, I've gone on for so long. I've probably been rambling most of the time, but there is just so much to say about this whiskey, and that is why there are so many reviews of it on YouTube. Some are better than others. None of them are wrong necessarily, but you can tell some of the people that are reviewing Stranahan's are not really the most experienced in whiskey. You probably might know some of the people I'm talking about. Others are obviously very experienced and well-versed in all manner of whiskey, and it really never hurt for you to hear somebody's opinion. I would recommend picking this up for yourself if you want to spend $60 on a whiskey that is not a bourbon, not a scotch, something that is unique. You cannot go wrong with Stranahan's. That is my opinion. The last thing I want to point out about Stranahan's, and you may notice this right away, obviously, it's part of their marketing scheme and gimmick. That is the stainless steel cap on the bottle. What is the purpose of that cap? There are some whiskey reviewers, very well respected whiskey reviewers, who are quite knowledgeable in their realms of expertise, who have bashed on Stranahan's Colorado whiskey for its stainless steel cap. They've said, this is a jigger. This is a shot glass. Or my bad. They've said it's a shot glass. It's terrible. It's ugly. Au contraire. First of all, it can be used as a jigger because it actually, this line right here, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see? Yes, you can. This line right here where my ring finger is 2 ounces. So you can use this as a jigger. You could use this as a shot glass if you were in the mountains, but why would you take this bottle to the mountains? I guess if you had lots of money and or wanted to really experience good whiskey while you were camping, you could do that. But even though it has the line for measurement, so it can act as a jigger, and even though it can be used as a shot glass, that is not the reason that it is on the bottle. The reason obviously is marketing, but why is this here for marketing purposes? And the answer is history. It is a nod to the early settlers on the frontier who used to use tin caps and other metal caps to put over their bottles of whiskey to reduce evaporation. And so this is a nod to a very significant historical practice in the whiskey industry. And anyone who touts themselves as a whiskey buff or a student of whiskey history ought to know better and ought to have done their research. So I will leave you with that little nugget of wisdom. There is quite a long story to this whiskey, and perhaps I can talk more about it sometime. Actually, we have Stranahan's Diamond Peak whiskey coming up in a future episode, so perhaps I should have saved some of this discussion for next episode, but it's okay. This will be my first episode that goes longer than 20 minutes. I hope you can forgive me. Be that as it may, I would like to say thank you for sticking around this long, provided that you have stuck around this long. If you've stuck around this long, I assume you must like my channel, and so would it be, I hate to impose, but would it be too much of a stretch to ask for a small favor? If you would just scroll down and hit that like button, subscribe to me, turn on your notifications, share with your friends if you found this interesting in any way. If I've said something that's factually incorrect or that you disagree with, give me some constructive criticism in the comments. I always like constructive criticism. I always am looking to better myself, and I am never opposed to having a conversation. So let me know what you think in the comments. I will be launching a Patreon soon, so if you want to buy me a drink, I would very much appreciate that. If you want to be a good whiskey mate, drop me a little bit of support to get a dram of whiskey. And at some point I will be uploading a mailing address. If you want to send me any samples, please don't send me anthrax. I'm looking at you, ISIS, okay? So please don't send me any of that kind of stuff. But if you send me a spirit that has not been opened, I will review it on this channel. That is a guarantee. I've been your host as we journey through the wonderful experience of Stranahan's Colorado whiskey together. I hope it's been together. I hope if you don't already have a bottle of this in your collection, I hope that this video has persuaded you to pick up a bottle. I'm not paid by Stranahan's, by the way. I have no sponsorships. I just really like this whiskey. Until next time, I've been your host and tour guide as we journey together, seeking ever more knowledge and enlightenment on our spirit quest.